is my great joy to welcome you again to the third episode of Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. I am your host, Elma Canfield. Today I will resume my story and tell you what resulted when I changed my thinking about living a life of shame, devastation, and everlasting defeat after a night at 18 years old when my entire world crumbled. The night at my solo vocal performance in a small performance hall in New York City. The night that I could literally not make a sound. As I resume my story, I was 29 years old, living in the Midwest, divorced, and with two boys still in school. However, I had changed my thinking, and as a result, I was no longer devastated, defeated, or silent. I knew who I was and what I wanted, and I had developed a way of thinking that has become central to my life, which I called performance potential, and had by then defined performance potential, which continues to be the motif of change your thinking, change your life. At that time, I had reached my performance potential and was consciously putting to use all that I knew. And I was determined to expand it. I enrolled in graduate school to become a psychotherapist. And when I graduated and did my postgraduate studies, I created a private psychotherapy practice in St. Louis. Although it was a general practice, I did have the opportunity to work with performing artists from the city's symphony orchestra and repertory companies. Even then, although the concept of performance potential hadn't yet fully crystallized, it was the core of my work with these artists. And at the age of 40, that ripe old age, when my sons had become young adults and I was about to marry the love of my life, Howard Canfield, I closed my practice in the Midwest and for the second time moved back to New York City. In 1980, when I relocated to Manhattan, I wanted to be for the performing artist what no one had been for me. In 1983, I opened my psychotherapy practice to work exclusively for performing artists. I thought I would be one of many. Was I ever wrong? I was the one and only. My practice became an instant success and still remains active. I designed my office to reflect the performers with whom I worked. In my office, I had a small stage on which there was a piano and a ballet bar. I would ask the artists who were having difficulty expressing their psychological struggles and challenges in words to reenact them in their own art form. I think that these artists really appreciated this approach, as sometimes they would go directly to the stage as we began our session. Musicians would often bring their instruments into each session in anticipation of stage work. I keenly remember a bass player bringing his enormous instrument onto my stage to play a painful memory And as he was rather a large person, I would imagine the stage quaking under their weight. It didn't, and they played through his pain. Of course, the concept of performance potential was continuing to evolve. And as I look back, there was no one who taught me more about it than Hal. And if you will indulge me, I would like to tell you about Hal. Hal was the second performer I saw in my New York office. He was in a big show on Broadway and had read about me in the New York Post regarding stage fright. Hal did not have stage fright. He had life fright. This was in the mid-1980s, and he had found 2 lesions, one on his stomach and one on his left leg. Hal was 27 years young. I had heard the word AIDS just 8 months before. Hal's partner had died the year before and had helped us both understand more than either of us wanted to know about how gay men die from this horrific disease. How to live meaningfully while dying, or how to live meaningfully knowing that you're going to die was challenging. My impulse was not to charge Hal my fee, but I decided that would be really demeaning. We continued our once-a-week sessions. How was Hal going to reach his performance potential as he was dying? And for that matter, how was I going to reach mine? I decided that the questions are still the same. How was Hal going to be present in his life now? Who was he? What were his values? How was he going to live his values? What did he want? And that is how our work proceeded. Hal needed to leave his show because his physical stamina couldn't sustain what that show demanded. But that did not stop him from performing. No, indeed. One of Hal's life's dream was to choreograph a show of his own and to share the story of his life. For that, he found the energy. His friends got together to be the cast in his production and contributed the money to rent a studio for 2 performances here in the city. Here, the universe seemed to be smiling. Hal had rehearsed a number, a duet with a friend of his on my office stage, sharing the love he had for his deceased partner. I could cry as I'm remembering this. His dance was one of the most vulnerable pieces of choreography that I have ever witnessed. It was all I could do not to share my tears. Unfortunately, Hal was too weak to perform when his production went up. Hal was a member of the audience when he witnessed his work. And Hal had asked me to attend the second of 2 performances. He died the next day. At Hal's memorial service, which he requested that I attend, They played the video of his production. I cried my heart out. Hal is also an accomplished visual artist. Several months after Hal's death, I received notice that he had willed me 2 of his works. Both hang in my home. In 1986, 3 years after I had opened my private practice, I answered an ad in the New York Times for a 9-hour-a-week psychotherapist on-campus position at the Juilliard School. Despite hundreds of applicants, I got the gig. I quickly realized that the position at Juilliard was more of an inspiration than a practical reality, as there were challenges. No office, no desk, no phone line. The students called my private practice line at all hours of the day and night. 3 months in, I had spoken with over 80 students, many in serious emotional distress. I could not sustain this, and more importantly, they couldn't either. So I went to Juilliard's then president, Dr. Joseph Plessy, and said, I think that Juilliard needs an on-campus counseling service, free of charge, confidential, with no limited sessions, and another part-time therapist, and a consulting psychiatrist. He looked at me without skipping a beat and said, do you want to create it? Yes, I said, rather idealistically, on the condition that it be built for performing arts students with clinicians who understand their art form, the cultural pressures that they face, and their inherent vulnerabilities. And that's how the Juilliard Counseling Services came into being. Dr. Polisi honored this commitment throughout my entire tenure at the school, and I became founding director of something that didn't just support performing arts students, it honored them. This remains the most special, unique, and challenging professional opportunity of my lifetime. Bravo, Juilliard. And how ironic, I ended up attending Juilliard one way or another. Full circle. I want to thank you for getting to know me. Go to my website, elmalinscanefield.com, to watch, listen, or subscribe. Until then, I wish for you to be the best that you can be. Do the best that you can do, bringing into play on stage or off all that you know now.